Ladies and gentlemen, the following podcast is set for one episode. Your host from Columbus, Ohio, is Michael Kirk. Welcome to the Outlaw Mudcast. Hello and welcome to the Outlaw Mudcast, your digital audio dirt sheet for all things Super Show. And as I announced on the last episode of the Mudcast, this is the Kickstarter addendum special. So I knew that we had not covered Kenpo Kenney, and I knew that we had not covered the Duke, because those had not been released, spoiled, unveiled prior to the Kickstarter release. But when the Kickstarter came out, there were not only these cards, but there were some other cards I was not expecting or thinking about that we needed to cover. So rather than try to fit these in a regular show, work them in over the next few weeks because we already have a lot of things to talk about, I'm just going to put them all on this show right here. So it's just going to be nothing but me covering the cards I did not cover that were part of the Kickstarter release. I'll start with the two I mentioned before, Kenpo Kenney and the Duke. These are the singles competitors. We'll do Kenpo Kenney first. Here are the skills. Here's the game. Kenpo Kenney. Power 5, Technique 9, Agility 7, Strike 10, Submission 8, Grapple 6. Once on your turn, when you hit a card with Stomp, Strike, or Elbow in the name, you may play an additional card this turn, or your next turn rolls +1. So look at the skills. Strike of 10, running there, it makes sense. Technique of 9, single leg crab would work well here. You 8 to submission, obviously you can't run bow and arrow, so if you're going to be running a single leg crab. So of the 13 through 15s, I'm recommending those two. I've always liked gimmicks that trigger off of keywords. Now this is limited in that you have to hit the card on your turn to get the bonus. So for example, if you use the stop elbow strikes, which has both elbow and strike in the name, to stop one of your opponent's grapples, that will not trigger the gimmick. But there are a lot of great cards out there with stomp and elbow in the name. Strike, other than the elbow strikes, strike down comes to mind. That's a very nice new follow-up strike. I believe it's at number 16. Yeah, there's a lot of great options. I know, having played JT Dunn in the past, there's a lot of good options for elbow, building around his death by elbow finish strike. So yeah, I like these three keywords. They're also, with the exception of elbow, they're really keywords you haven't seen featured. I have talked about Stomp before with Krampus, but those keywords revolved around finishes for those competitors. This is the first time I've seen the keywords in a gimmick, so that's quite nice. Let's go through the finishes. Start with the finish strike, number 28, 6 hands. If you have 6 other strikes in play, this card cannot be stopped. If not, your opponent buries 3 cards in their hand, and you bury 3 cards in your discard pile. I don't know what to think about this. You know, having an unstoppable finish is good, although with the release, and I haven't talked about those yet, but with the release of the 2 spectacle cards, there's one in Valiant and one in Newman, both that essentially say, if you stop an unstoppable finish, you play the spectacle, you win the game right then and there. Those kind of put a little bit of a damper on the stops. I'm almost thinking you could think about running Death by Elbow here. It's going to give you a turn roll +1 when you hit it. And if you stack the deck with elbows, of course it gives you +1 to your skills for each elbow card you have in play. I would consider Death by Elbow. Otherwise, you can play this. I mean, you have to get a lot of strikes out to make it unstoppable. Otherwise, it's your opponent bearing and you bearing. That might be nice late game to be able to get some cards back from your discard pile and make your opponent take some cards out of their hand. I don't know. I'm kind of a toss-up. I'm not too high on 6 hands. The finished grapple, number 29, Dance in the Dark. +1 to agility, +2 to grapple. Your opponent buries 2 random cards in their hand. It's nice. It's going to bump your grapple and your agility both to 8. So it'll give you a 5, 3 eighths, a 9, and a 10. So 5 and a 6 to roll 8 or better is not bad. And then the finish submission, number 30, Horsebite Pinch. +2 to grapple, +2 to submission. Your opponent's next turn roll is -2. It's going to bump your grapple to an 8 and your submission to a 10. So 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10. They're fine. They're fine submissions. I think there's a lot of things that could trigger his gimmick. So you can find yourself adding to your turn roll or playing multiple cards. I mean, that is one thing that is nice about Kenpo Kenney is that if you play, a follow-up with Stomp, Strike, or Elbow in the name, and there are quite a few on your turn, you can throw the finish right after that. So I like his gimmick. Like I said, I'd think about maybe putting in Death by Elbow instead of 6 hands. But he seems like a fine competitor. Next, we'll go on to the Duke. Here are the skills. Here's the gimmick. Power 6, Technique 10, Agility 8, Strike 5, Submission 7, Grapple 9. When you and another player roll the same skill, you may have both players shuffle their hand into their deck and add the top 4 cards of their deck to their hand. So we'll go through the skills first. Technique 10, Single Leg Crab, Grapple 9, DDT. You could, with an 8, think about running Kick in the corner. That's up to you. But you can run 3 stops at 13 through 15 with this competitor. Now, the gimmick says when you or another player roll the same skill. Now, if you're for the singles match, it's just going to be you and your opponent rolling the same skill. There's a couple different ways you can use this. If you have a low hand, if you have less than 4 cards, you could trigger this gimmick when you and your opponent roll the same skill to get yourself up to 4 cards, especially if you won the turn roll, because this is going to trigger before you draw for the turn roll. So, if you have just a few cards, if you have less than 4 cards in your hand, if you don't want to keep any of those 4 cards or you wouldn't mind losing some, you could essentially let your gimmick trigger, shuffle your hand back, draw 4, and then if you won the turn roll, you draw your 5th, and now you have 5 cards in your hand. That's not a bad idea. The other way you could use this is if your opponent has a huge hand and you want to thin your opponent's hand out, you could essentially roll, make your opponent shuffle. If they have 12 cards in hand, you can make them shuffle 12 cards into their deck, and they only get to draw 4 back. So this can have some very nice hand destruction opportunities. It gets more of a situational gimmick, but this can swing things quite a bit. It's a very intriguing gimmick. So let's look at the finishers for the Duke. The finish strike number 28 is a spotlight card called Here I Come. +1 to agility, +1 to strike. When this card is in your discard pile, and you and another player roll the same skill for your turn roll, you may bury this card. So, skill-wise, if you play this, it's going to bump your agility from an 8 to a 9, and your strike from a 5 to a 6. So you have 2 6s, a 7, 2 9s, and a 10. So 50% chance of rolling 9 or better is good. And if this is in the discard pile, you trigger your gimmick. You can bury this before you shuffle and draw your 4, so you have a chance of getting this back. This could be very nice late game. You hit your gimmick. You don't have a lot of cards in your deck. You don't have a large hand. If you only had 3 cards in your hand and you're decked out, there's no cards in your deck, when your gimmick would trigger, you can bury this, shuffle your hand, and then get it right back to your hand. So you'd have the finish strike in your hand. Could be a very nice late game recursion card. The next card, the finish grapple, number 29, Tango Takedown. +1 to submission, +1 to grapple. If you and your opponent roll the same skill for your turn roll, this card is also a lead. So, a lot of interesting possibilities here because, let me do the skills first. It's going to bump your submission to an 8 and your grapple to 10. So 5, 6, 2 8s, and 2 10s. Pretty good. But here's the thing. If you and your opponent both roll the same skill for your turn roll, if you have Tango Takedown in your hand, you can essentially not trigger your gimmick because it's a may, it's not a must, and play this as a lead. Or, if you don't have this in your hand, you can trigger your gimmick, get this in your hand through your gimmick, and then play it as a lead immediately. This could be a very nice early game surprise for a player. Game starts, you both roll the same skill, you force the shuffle, you end up drawing the Tango Takedown, and you play it. You could also be in a situation where you draw this card immediately, and then if you happen to roll the same skill, you can then play it first turn as a lead. So that's a very nice option to have. The last finish is the Wicked Waltz. Of course, it's finished submission number 30. +2 to power, +1 to submission. Draw 1 card. If you rolled the same skill as your opponent, double these bonuses. Again, if you opt to shuffle and you end up shuffling and drawing this card as one of the 4, you'd have the double the bonuses. Or if you happen to roll the skill, same skill, you can forego the shuffle if you have this in your hand, win the turn roll, and then you just play it. From what I understand, the doubling would not just be for the bonuses, but it also would be for the draw the card. So if you just play this normally, +2 to power, +1 to submission, bumps those numbers to an 8. So you'd have 5, 3 8s, a 9, and a 10. If you doubled, it'd bump your power to a 10 and your submission to a 9. So you'd have a 5, an 8, 2 9s, and 2 10s. So that's really good. And then, of course, you draw 2 cards in the doubling instead of 1. So I like the finishes of this. And one thing I have not brought up, the way this gimmick is worded, it just says when you and another player roll the same skill. I mentioned earlier, of course, if you're playing a singles match, that's going to be your opponent. But if you're playing in a multiplayer match, with Triple Threat or Fatal 4-Way or Birdcage, if you and another player roll the same skill during the turn roll, it's going to trigger your gimmick. Another thing is this. In those multiplayer matches, including the tag where you and a partner play, if you decide to use double team in the case of a tag team, or team up in the case of a Triple Threat or Fatal 4-Way, you can, when you tag or team up, you're going to trigger this gimmick. So you can elect, basically, if your tag partner and you are low on cards and you tag, you can trigger to shuffle your hand in your deck and draw 4. And then, of course, you'll draw off the tag, so you'll be drawing 5. Another thing is this. While the Tango Takedown and Wicked Waltz both talk about rolling the same skill as your opponent, the Finish Strike Here I Come just says if you and another player roll the same skill and this is in your discard pile. So you could tag, bury this in your discard pile, and then if you've decked out, you can draw it. Same thing in a Triple Threat or Fatal 4-Way. You could bury this card. It doesn't have to be your opponent, it can be your partner. So that's quite nice with the Duke, that it has those couple options. You don't have to it's not just when you roll the same as your opponent. It could be the same as your partner in a tag, or someone you decide to team up with in a Triple Threat or Fatal 4-Way. But that's the Duke. But those were the 2 cards that came with the first and second tier. Of course, Kenpo Kenney was available in the first tier of the Kickstarter. The Duke was part of the second. The remaining cards I'm going to talk about come from 2 sources: the Family Faction Pack and the Stretch Goals. I'm going to talk about the card, or more accurately, the competitor set from the Stretch Goals, the Wall of Text. This is a one-man trio. The idea is this competitor is so large she functions as a trio. Here are the skills. Here's the gimmick. Power 15, Technique 27, Agility 21, Strike 18, Submission 30, Grapple 23. So with a submission of 30 and a technique of 27, since both of those in the 13 through 15 slot would occupy the same card number 15, you're probably going to go with the submission, the bow and arrow type over the single leg crab type. The next highest skill at 24 is the grapple. You could run DDT there. I'm a little hesitant to run any kind of stop in that 13 through 15, any kind of skill-based stop that revolves around your skill being higher than your opponent's on the third highest skill. It's just a little iffy. But here's the gimmick. When you roll strike, grapple, or submission for your turn roll, flip one card. If that card has one line of text, bury one card in your hand. 2 lines of text, draw one card. 3 lines of text, your turn roll is +2. 4 or more lines of text, shuffle 2 cards from your discard pile into your deck. So this is actually quite intriguing because you can effectively decide what kind of cards you want to play and have that work around your gimmick. For example, let's look at stops. So what are sort of your options at stops? Let's look at the stop any options in 25 through 27. You could decide I'm going to play, I'll just use 25. You could play the dropkick. Dropkick has one line of text. So if you flip the dropkick, you bury a card in your hand. Or you could choose to play something like the Superman Punch. Stop any finish grapple. Your next turn roll is +2. That's 2 lines of text. So when you flip that, you draw a card on top of it. You could choose to play something like Double Axe Handle. I believe Double Axe Handle has 3 lines of text. Draw one card if this is a tag or a trio, which this is a trio. Your next turn roll is +2. So you draw a card off that and you get +2. So you can sort of decide, okay, I'm going to play this version of a card or another version of a card, and because this card has one type has 2 lines, one type has 3 lines, you can sort of build your deck. So basically, when you have to flip that card, you know you're going to be able to draw. If you play a card like, because you're going to be flipping, let's say you decide to play a card like Jump Kick. Jump Kick has 4 or more lines of text. That's a card where I believe it's, if you roll agility for your turn roll, you can add it from your discard pile to your hand, and you draw one card and you bury one card. Because it has 4 or more lines of text, when you flip it, you'll be able to shuffle 2 cards from your discard pile into your deck, and then you can always, if you roll agility, get it back to your hand. So I think there's quite a lot of deck teching with this card. I think this card is going to be one where you really can tech this out to sort of work around your gimmick where, if you want to do a lot of drawing, you play a lot of cards that have 2 lines of text. If you want to get turn roll bonuses, you play cards that have 3 lines of text. You just kind of can mix it up and figure out what works best for you. If you want to avoid, burying cards in your hand, you'll make sure all your cards have at least 2 lines of text. But yeah, I find that very interesting, the wall of text. Here are the finishes for the wall of text. Start with the finish strike number 28, Lexical Lariat. +4 to grapple, +4 to strike. If you have 16 or more lines of text in play, +4 to power and agility. So, +4 to grapple, +4 to strike on its own is going to bump your strike from an 18 to a 22, and your grapple from a 24 to a 28. So you'll have a 15, 21, 22, 27, 28, and 30. And if you have 16 or more lines of text in play, you'll bump your power and agility by 4. So you'll have a 19, 22, 25, 27, 28, and 30, which I think is really good. And because Lexical Lariat has 4 lines on it, the other cards you have in play only need to have a total of 12 lines between them to make that second part of the gimmick trigger. Because it's going to count the 4 lines on Lexical Lariat. So like I say, if you have a card like Jump Kick, I want to say has about 5 lines. I think it's somewhere, I want to say it's over 4. but somewhere between like 5 and 6 lines. So, if it's got 5 lines, jump kick, you just need, two 4-line cards and you got it. And 3 and a 4-line card gets you to 12. So, yeah, you can. It does not take a lot to trigger Lexical Lariat's additional bonus. You just need. You can probably do it in 3 cards, give or take. But that's Lexical Lariat. Let's move on to the next finish card, the finish grapple number 29, Pontificating Pile Driver. +3 to power, +3 to strike. If the crowd meter is 2 or greater, and you have more lines of text in play than your opponent, this card is also a follow. So it's just going to bump your power from a 15 to an 18, your strike from an 18 to a 21, so it'd give you 18, 2 21s, 24, 27, and 30. It's not bad. The best part of it, was a follow-up. If your crowd meter is 2, and you have more lines of text in play than your opponent. This card itself has 6 lines of text in play. And actually, when I look at these, all of these finishes have at least 4 lines of text, so if you flip them, you would actually be able to shuffle them back. So that's quite nice. Crowd meter 2, you could think about running a card to boost the crowd meter, but I still think of these two so far, my favorite's the Lexical Lariat. And now here is the last finish, the finish submission number 30, Debilitating Diatribe. +5 to power, +3 to grapple. Add 2 cards with 4 or more lines of text from your discard pile to your hand. So +5 to power bumps your 15 to 20, +3 to grapple bumps your 24 to 27. So you'll have 18, 20, 21, 27, 27, 30. So that's good. 50% chance to roll 27 or higher. And then, of course, you'll be able to add 2 cards with 4 or more lines of text, which includes both of your finishes. You could use this card to get both of your finishes back if they're both in the discard pile, or you could choose to get some other cards back that have at least 4 lines of text. So yeah, I like the Wall of Text. I think he's a very interesting card. I think you could do quite a bit of tech with him. But now all that remains is talk about the cards that are in the faction pack, the Family. So there are 3 things in the Family faction pack that I want to talk about. 2 of them are cards. One of them is a crowd meter. So let me talk about one of the first cards. There's a brand new entrance card in this. Entrance 4 starts the party. At the start of the match, if this match has 4 total players, search your deck for card number 4 and add it to your hand. So this is a card that's going to work in a Fatal 4-way, and it's going to work in a multiplayer tag. So if you want to start the game and go get something like Kick, Snap Kick, Apocalypse, you can have this card as your entrance card and go get that card, the number 4 card that you want to start with. Now, I believe you would have to show your opponents what card you're getting to prove you've gotten a number 4, which could be an interesting thing. Maybe you want to pack the Apocalypse and then show your opponents, hey, I've got that Apocalypse, to make them sort of wary of throwing a follow-up grapple. I don't know, but it's an interesting card. Again, I think it's very situational, and depending on your competitor, there may be a number 4 card that works really well for you tech-wise, and you decide, you know what, I want to start with that lead number 4. That'd be a good lead to start off with, because your number 4 card is going to be a lead. So maybe go get that card. Very interesting to me, but yeah, I could see this in play in multiplayer tag a lot. But yeah, that's the entrance card in the Family Pack. Next, we'll talk about the trio card in the Family Pack, the Family. It's a very simple gimmick. Here are the skills, and here's the gimmick. Power 21, Technique 15, Agility 24, Strike 30, Submission 27, Grapple 18. So Strike 30, you're looking at a running Lariat type card. 27, you're looking at a bow and arrow type card. And then, of course, 24 is agility. So you're not going to play a kick in the corner type when you already have a running lariat. So I'm thinking you'll be playing a 13 and a 15, and then 14 is going to be kind of up for grabs. The gimmick is, when you hit a strike or submission, draw 2 cards. Now, this is, of course, hitting a strike or submission on either turn. So if you play a strike on or submission on your own turn, and it's successful, you'll draw 2. If you stop your opponent's grapple or strike by hitting a strike stop or a submission stop, you'll draw. So maybe you decide to do things like I mentioned earlier, the double axe handle. The double axe handle is a strike that works in a trio card. It already says draw 1, so when you hit that strike, you'll now draw 3. This can make cards that already draw, strikes and submissions that already draw, something like, say, 360 there, even better. Because you'll flip 1, shuffle 2, draw 2, and then draw 2 again. So you could do something like that, or you could decide, you know what, I'm not going to worry about cards that draw, because I know that when I hit my strike and submission, I'm going to get the draw on top of that. So maybe I play things like the face cards in the 23-24. I play running face kick, flip 4, add 1 from my discard pile, draw 2. This is also going to work on your finishes. So when you hit a strike finish or a submission finish, you're going to automatically draw 2 cards, regardless of what the text of the cards say. So I like this gimmick. It's simple, but will help you get a lot of cards in Trio. Now, there are a lot of finish options on this because this card, as a trio, of course, works with trio cards, but it also will use the finishes of all 4 competitors in the family faction pack. Paulie Picone finishes, Italian Bambata finishes, Lorenzo Manicati finishes, and Maria Marinara finishes are all valid with the family trio card. So let's go through all of the finish possibilities and talk about them. We're going to go in order as illustrated on the card, so we're going to start with Paulie Picone first. Paulie Picone, the finish strike number 28, Dead Man's Hand, +1 to agility, +2 to power. If you hit a card with punch in the name last turn, this card cannot be stopped, and of course, because it's a strike, you will draw 2 cards. +1 to agility bumps your agility to a 25, bumps your power to 23, so 15, 18, 23, 25, 27, and 30. Bonuses are okay. It is an unstoppable card. Again, with the new spectacles, you're kind of running those at your own risk. The Bank Breaker, the finish grapple number 29 for Paulie, +3 to technique, +4 to grapple. Add 2 cards with punch in the name from your discard pile to your hand. So it's going to bump your 15 to an 18, and your grapple from an 18 to a 22. So 18, 21, 22, 24, 27, 30. Sort of helps mitigate your botches a bit. And then, of course, I think running this card will depend on how many punches you're running. But that's the Bank Breaker. The finish submission for Paulie Picone, number 30. The Sicilian Necktie. +3 to technique. +1 to submission. Each time your opponent rolls for a breakout, they bury 1 random card in their hand. So bump your technique to an 18 and your submission to 28. So 2 18s, 21, 24, 28, and 30. Okay, the best part about this card is the bury function, where every time they roll, they're going to bury a card. So you know at least they're going to bury 1 random card because they're going to have to roll at least 1 breakout. But yeah, those are the Paulie Picone finishes. Next, let's look at the Italian Bambata finishes. Start with the finish strike 28, the finish line. +2 to strike, +2 to power. Take all submission cards from your discard pile and shuffle them into your deck. Draw 1 card, and of course, this will actually draw 3 cards. I've neglected to mention that on the submission before. That'll also draw 2 cards because of the gimmick. This will draw 3 cards. It draws 1 card from what's on the text, and then of course it draws 2 from the gimmick. +2 to strike bumps your strike to a 32. +2 to power gives you a 23. So 15, 18, 23, 24, 27, and 32. It does give you pretty much an auto win at crowd meter 0 if you roll that strike. It will allow you to get all of your submission cards back into your deck. So as you play them and hit them, you'll be able to draw. So that could be an interesting way to start drawing a bunch of cards. You add submissions, which you draw, play, and get additional draws. The stats are kind of okay. The best part is having the over 30. Next, we'll move on to the Bombada. Of course, Bombada has 2 grapple finishes. The original grapple finish is the Bombada Bing, number 29, plus 2 to agility, plus 1 to grapple. Bury all submissions in your opponent's discard pile. So it'll give you 15, 19, 21, 26, 27, 30. It's okay. The other Bombada finish grapple, the Bombada Bomb, plus 1 to agility, plus 2 to grapple. Add 1 submission you haven't played to your hand. So 15, 20, 21, 25, 27, 30. The skill boosts are just alright with this. I kind of like the add the submission play better than the bury all submissions in your opponent's discard pile, but they're both alright. And then we have the winner's circle, the finish submission. If your opponent's turn roll was submission, this card cannot be stopped. The opponent's submission skill is -2 during their first and second breakout rolls. It's fine. Again, we have of course the caveat with the having to be careful about cards that cannot be stopped, because if you stop those and have that spectacle, you can win the game. Of course, you will also draw 2 off the winner's circle because of the gimmick. But that's the winner's circle. Next, Greetings from Sunnyside. Finish strike number 28. Plus 3 to technique, plus 1 to agility. Each player shuffles their hand into their deck, then draws the same number of cards. Of course, because it's a strike, you will, through your gimmick, draw an additional 2 on top of that. 3 to your technique, and 1 to your agility bumps your technique to an 18, your agility to 25. So you have 2 18s, 21, 25, 27, and 30. It's alright. The finished grapple, number 29. Al Dente Bomb, plus 3 to power. If your opponent breaks out, you may shuffle this card in your deck and draw 1 card. It's going to bump your 21 to a 24, so 15, 18, 2 24s, 27, and 30. It's alright. And then the submission number 30, 5 Burrows Chokehold, plus 1 to power, plus 3 to technique, plus 1 to submission. Shuffle 2 cards from your discard pile into your deck and draw 1 card. And then, of course, you'll draw an additional 2 because this is a submission. So plus 1 to power makes that a 22. Plus 3 to technique makes it an 18. Plus 1 to submission makes it 28. So 18, 18, 22, 24, 28, and 30. It's alright. And now the last finishes for the family. The Maria Marinara finishes. The finish strike, number 28, the bottom deal. Plus 2 to agility, plus 1 to strike. Draw the bottom card of your deck, and of course, you'll draw 2 cards on top of that because of the gimmick. It's going to bump your agility to 26, your strike to 31. So 15, 18, 21, 26, 27, 31. It's not bad. It's going to draw 3. Gives you that 31, so possibility of crowding to 0, of rolling over 30 and making it so they can't break out. It's not bad. The finished grapple, the House Edge, plus 1 to agility, plus 3 to grapple. When this card is in your discard pile, and your opponent adds any number of cards from their discard pile to their hand, your next turn rolls plus 2. Bonus-wise, I'll bump your agility to 25, your grapple to 21, so 15, 2 21s, 25, 27, 30. It's okay. The nice part is the plus 2 to the turn roll. It's going to essentially allow you to avoid bumps. Because if you and your opponent would bump, you've got the plus 2, you're going to win the turn roll. So that's a nice feature of that card. The last card, You finish submission number 30 from Maria Marinera. Sleeping with the 7 fishes. +2 to power. +2 to grapple. Bury 3 cards in any player's discard pile. Draw 2 cards. So it's going to bump your power to a 23. And your grapple to a 20. So 15, 20, 23, 24, 27, and 30. And of course, it will also allow you to draw 2 cards. So this could be a nice card late game because it will allow you to bury 3 cards in your own discard pile. So if you decked out, you can bury 3. And since you're burying, you set the order. And then you can draw 2. So if you're trying to get certain cards back, you hit this card, you bury the cards you want, you draw the top 2, you've now got those 2 cards in your hand. So that could be nice. There's one other card I want to talk about that trios can run that gives them special bonuses. It is the finish submission number 29, a grapple finish, Impact Bomb. Impact Bomb is a skill requirement card. You must have a submission skill of 8 or greater to run it. Now, the way these skill requirement cards work is this. If it is a tornado tag, you must do double the skill requirement. So you have to have a 16 or greater. In a trios, you triple it. You must have a 24 or greater in submission to run the card. The family has a 27 submission, so they can run Impact Bomb. Impact Bomb says +1 to agility, +2 to grapple. If this is a trios match, triple these bonuses. Add 1 submission you have in play to your hand. So, with it, this is going to be a trios match. It's going to then triple the bonuses. So, it'll be a +3 to agility and +6 to grapple. So it'll give you a 15, a 21, a 24, 2 27s, and a 30. This is probably the best card, bonus-wise, that I've seen for the family. Of all the ones I went through, I like Impact Bomb best of all. It's going to give you 2 27s and a 24. So it takes away, essentially, it takes away your 18. So you really only have a 1 botch. You're going to have a 50-50 shot of rolling 27 or higher. So I like the Impact Bomb. I could almost recommend running the Impact Bomb with this. So after looking at these, I would say of the strikes, I probably like the finish line of all of the strikes, but it's kind of a toss-up. I'm mostly picking the finish line because it gives me that, ability to roll a 32 and win outright. And it's going to let me draw 3 cards. Could also do probably the bottom deal, be my next favorite. Again, same reason. Gives me that 31. And it's going to let me draw 3 cards in this case. But that's what I think about the strikes. The grapple-wise, I think either I might run the House Edge to avoid the bumps, or, and I'm leaning more this way, the Impact Bomb, because I think it's just better than any of the other grapple finish options. And then for submissions, I like either Sleeping with the Fishes for that late game recursion of being able to bury the 3 and then draw 2, or the 5 Burrows Chokehold, because I can shuffle 2 from my discard of my deck and then draw 3. 1 because it says draw 1 card on the submission, and an additional 2 because of the game. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the family trio. The last thing from the Kickstarter and the Family Factor Pack I want to talk about is the brand new crowd meter. The tag team match crowd meter. Now this crowd meter only applies, from what I've been able to find out, to multiplayer tag matches. A match where you and a partner take on 2 opponents. It does not work in Tornado Tag. I'm going to go through each level of the crowd meter and talk about the changes. So, tag team match. starts off at the crowd meter 0, no countouts, max hand size 10, and it says during turn rolls, gimmicks can only be used one time. So what that means essentially is this. And let me use a couple of gimmicks from different competitors as examples. So Combat Chris, for example, has a gimmick that says, when your turn rolls at least 4 greater than your opponent's, draw 1 card. When is at least 4 less than your opponent's, draw 2 cards. If you're playing Combat Chris, you roll a 5 in a tag match, one of your opponents rolls a 9, one of your opponents rolls a 10. Because the gimmick can only be used one time, you cannot say draw 2 cards off the opponent that rolls a 10 because you rolled at least 4 less than that opponent, and draw another 2 cards off the opponent that rolled a 9 because you rolled at least 4 less than him too. You can only trigger your gimmick one time. Same thing, let's say you're playing somebody like King Greatness. King Greatness says, if you and your opponent roll the same skill for your turn roll, you add a card from your discard pile to your hand. If you are playing in a tag team match, you roll strike, both opponents roll strike, you cannot add 2 cards from this card to your hand, 1 for each opponent. You only trigger 1 time. And just taking a quick glance, that text is on every tag team match card, so that is an effect of the entire tag team match. At level 1, the text all finish rolls are +1 is added. Everything else remains the same. At level 2, all finish rolls are +2 and everything remains the same. At level 3, it's +3 to the finishes. 4, it's +4. 5, it's +5. Now, when you hit level 6, there is a change. You have a few things added to this. Number 1, in addition to being no countouts and having a maximum hand size of 10, the match is now a no disqualification. So from crowd meters level 0 up to level 5, if you play a card that says if this card is stopped, you lose the match due to disqualification. You play that card, you lose the match. At this point, at level 6, and it'll be this way through the highest level of the tag team match crowd meter, the match is no disqualification from this point going forward. All finish rolls are +6. So you can potentially roll a 16. It also has the added text at level 6. Your opponent cannot save their partner on their first breakout. So, at level 6, you roll the finish. Your opponent rolls the breakout roll. His partner cannot roll a save roll. The save roll will not happen until the second breakout roll. The next level is level 7. The finish rolls go up to being +7. And now the text says your opponent cannot save their partner on the first or second breakout roll. When a player hits the finish, he gets +7. The opponent he's hitting the finish on rolls once, twice, and then only on the third breakout roll can his opponent make a save. And the final level for the tag team match crowd meter is level 8. Finish rolls are now +8. The same save rules stay in play. So, the opponent cannot save on the first or second breakout roll. They can still save on the third. You also have 2 things that have now been added for the first time in this tag team match crowd meter. All gimmicks are blank, and all finishes are also follow-ups. Once you have a lead in play, you can play a finish immediately. This also makes it so that at level 8, you can throw a card like Call to the Crowd, and then throw your finish right on top of that because the finish is now a follow-up. This also is kind of interesting with cards like Blind Tag, Snap Tag, Hot Tag that say that your partner can play a lead or follow-up. Because if I play Hot Tag on my turn, I can now throw their finish at crowd meter 8 and it's a follow-up. Because it's a follow-up, that now qualifies for that. So a little bit of tag team strategy. Don't know how many tag team matches will actually go all the way to level 8. Level 8 is pretty deep. But that's the new tag team match crowd meter. And that is everything that I wanted to cover out of the Kickstarter faction pack, at least that I'm aware of. If there's anything that slipped through the cracks that I realized later on that I need to cover, I will cover that on an additional show. Also, I may go ahead, and I'll say this now, I may go ahead when the community-created decks come out, the alt art cards, I may do a show talking about them. Probably not, just because, again, all those effects have already existed. But maybe I will. I don't know. But that is going to be this special edition. The show is finished. I haven't done this in a long time, but I'll do it right now. If you have any questions or comments, want to leave feedback, feel free to contact me. There's a couple different ways to contact the show. You can email the show, outlawmudcast@gmail.com. You can send us a direct message on Twitter. We are at Outlaw Mudcast on Twitter. Or you can just reach out to me. I am on Facebook Messenger. Otherwise, that has been this last Kickstarter special. Unless something, like I said, unexpected happens. I've enjoyed doing these Kickstarter specials. I wasn't even planning on doing this one, but I thought there was enough to talk about that it deserved its own show. Thank you to all of you for listening to this special episode, and a good day.